Today I'm going to talk about how we could contribute to open source, how to contribute to an open source project. So I gave this talk last night at Code Bar. So obviously you guys know who I am. We've heard the video. I'm a technical architect at Beamly, and I've written a book on beginning responsive design, and I love the web. So I'm really passionate about the web as a platform of the future, and a big part of the web is the open source communities that surround it. And by being users of the web, we're already benefiting from these communities, because pretty much any website you visit will be using some form of open source technology. So today what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the steps involved to actually get involved ourselves. So why contribute? So if you want to contribute, you're wanting to make the web a better place. So jQuery, for example, is used on 70.4% of websites, and has been instrumental in teaching a whole generation of developers JavaScript. It also enables us to help improve the open source code that you use. So quite often we're using open source projects, but we might find issues with them. We can go back and fix them. And a good example is Code Bar, which is a community for people to learn to code. And all their tutorials are open source, so you can actually go and contribute to them. So I've personally contributed to HTML ones. You can also influence the direction a project takes. So you can highlight extra use cases for a project the maintainers might not be aware of, which enables them to handle that in their future plans for the project. So it might inform of the direction. One of the big things that open source can do is it can influence what the browsers implement. So in this way, stuff like from jQuery, Sass, and Node are all making their way into browsers, reworked as native APIs. So examples are the CSS variables, JavaScript's query selector role, and the fetch API. So how do you contribute? So the simplest way you can start contributing is to simply document a feature. So one of the most important parts of an open source project is documentation. This is how the user gets to find out about the project and to understand what it does. So often, not all features of an open source project are documented. They may not be documented because the project maintainer might not have the time. So if you find an undocumented feature, it can be really helpful to document it, as other users of the project will also benefit from that documentation. Caveat, though, is sometimes they're undocumented for a reason. This might be that the method that you found is a side effect from another method that is publicly documented. So if you're concerned about this, you should raise it with the project maintainer, saying you want to document it, and check that they're happy for you to do so. Another way you can contribute to an open source project is actually to write a blog post, whether that's on your own blog or on someone else's, or as a guest post on someone else's blog. So you can write an open source project on your blog. And it could be either as a tutorial, so like steps on how you do something with the project, or it could even be just some notes. So often I write blog posts for myself that are actually just a series of notes on how to do something. So one example is I wrote a post on how to write command line interfaces using Node. So whenever I do that, I actually go back to that blog post so I can refresh myself on how to do that. It also it can be beneficial to projects as it helps promote the project and helps others to use it. Another thing you can do is get involved in discussions. So you can discuss the potential use cases of the project in areas like the GitHub issues, on forums, and it means that the developers are informed about how the project is being used. Also, you might have ideas for new features, so you can just discuss these with the maintainers. Another thing you can do is raise a bug. So humans aren't flawless. There's quite often bugs in our code. So when using a project, it's common to find bugs. And if you find them, you should report them, because if no one reports them, the maintainer might never find them. So in order to do this, what I recommend is you look at the project's bug tracker to see if anyone else has already had the issue. You don't want to raise a duplicate issue, as this just wastes your time and the maintainer's time. Having found the issue, create a repeatable test case. So a small amount of code that is using that open source project, and then the maintainer can see quickly what's going wrong. It's not helpful to just describe the use case when that's buried deep inside your code. And then you should then raise that ticket with all information on the project bug tracker. Having raised a bug, you might also want to fix one. So either you can look at the bug tracker and find an issue you want to fix, or simply fix something that you actually already that you found. For your first bug, I recommend you try something simple, so you can get to grips with the code of that project. So what you would do is you fork the project so you can make changes, and then you fix the issue and raise a pull request to the original repository, so the project owner can merge over fix into the code base. What you might find is he comes back with they come back with a few comments, and then you can discuss the fix, and you might have to make some changes before it gets finished. So you can the next thing you want to do is add some features like adding strawberries to these pancakes. So we can add any features that's useful for the project to have. So if you have a great idea, you think this project could do with this, and make it so much more better for not only myself but the users, it's a really good idea to suggest it. What you can do is you can look at similar projects to see where the project is lacking. So you might find that you're using a project that you really love, it's rave performance, but it's missing feature X from this other library that you don't really like, but it's got this feature. So you could suggest that you could add that feature to the library that you actually want to use, so you get the ideal solution. And the final way you might want to contribute to an existing project is to optimize or refactor some code. So you can optimize the existing code. This could be fixing issues performance and optimizing it to work better. Or you could sort of get involved in refactoring. So sometimes there's methods in open source projects that work working quickly, and the original author might not even be happy with them. So it's a nice thing to do to go and start refactoring that, helping them refactor that. If you want to do some ideas of where to start, you might look into the code base to see if there's any to-do items. Because quite often, if a developer wants to fix something, they'll add a to-do. So finding a project to contribute to. You know how to contribute, but how do you actually find a project? So the first thing I typically do is look at my favorite projects. So if you look at jQuery, the bug tracker is hosted on GitHub, and they have about 52 open tickets at the moment. So that's not too many, but they vary in difficulty in how it's fixed. Then you have something like Twitter Bootstrap. Again, their bug tracker is on GitHub, and they have 406 open issues. So they currently are going through an alpha for the version 4, so they have a lot of issues in that alpha that they're trying to get fixed. So if you can contribute, that's a great idea. And then we have something big like Chromium. So the bug tracker is hosted on Google Code, and that has 50,816 open tickets. So that's still 10,000 better than last time I looked, about 2 years ago, which was about 60,000. So they could seriously use some help. And don't be scared of trying to contribute to something like Chromium. The scariest thing is the amount of data it downloads when you check it out from the repository, because a lot of the code is written in CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. Even a lot of the ES6 functionality is actually implemented using JavaScript. So it's very easy for you to actually start getting involved there. So finding projects looking for help. So you want to help a random project, or you want to find something new to help. So there's a site called Triage. This allows you to sign up to an open issue in your inbox from your favorite repositories. Alternatively, you can also use it to find projects that are looking for help. So if a project actually actively needs help, you can actually find them. Then there's Open Hatch. So what this does, it matches you with open source projects that need help, and it allows you to search for issues by difficulty or skill. And then you can simply look at the GitHub Trending. So GitHub do a good job of showing their list of trending repositories. So you can have a look on there at trending repositories and even trending developers. So you might find that sometimes you want to start your own open source project. So it's something you want to find. You've come with a great idea of something you want to create yourself. So what is your project going to do? First, we ask ourselves what the project is going to do. So do you have a specific purpose? Do you have something you need, a outcome you want to achieve? And who is the project for? It's okay if you're saying the project is for yourself, because even if you're writing something that just saves yourself time, it probably saves someone else time. If you think it's for the community, you should be thinking about how you manage releases. Having asked ourselves these questions, there's a few things we need to do before starting our project. So first, we want to find contributors. This enables us to start discussing your project with other developers online and find others who are interested in working with you. So developers quite often don't like to join existing open source projects. This is because they might have opinions of how it should be structured. So it's good to try and get some people on board at the beginning. Alternatively, you could do what I often do is actually and choose to go it alone. What this means is that you can have full control of directing the project and how the API is written, but you may make it harder for your projects to gain traction, as others might not agree with how it works. So once you've got the contributors, you also need to look at how you license it. So users of your project want to know how they can use it. Many will want to use it commercially. So common licenses are the MIT, Apache, and BSD license. And most of my personal projects, I typically use MIT because it's really easy to understand, really short. At Beamly, we typically use Apache unless the community we're developing it for has other standards that they use. So picking a name. So picking a name is always really hard in development, and picking an open source project name is even harder than just picking a method name, because you have to find something that's unique. You want to avoid confusion with other projects. You should also kind of let the planned features of the project inform the name of your project. So if it's a carousel, naming it something X carousel, something carousel, kind of lends to suggest what that project does. Then we have then it should be relevant. So don't call a Ruby project jCarousel, because that kind of suggests it's JavaScript. So you've got your contributors, or you've chosen to go it alone. You've decided on a project name and planned what it will do. Now, how do you actually start writing that code? So the first thing to do is create the project on a source control provider of choice. Most projects choose something like GitHub. And then commit initial code, ensuring no passwords are in the commit. So this was my first open source mistake. The first project I ever committed, open source myself, I included a password. So typically to avoid that, what I do these days is if it's referencing a database, I actually have the username as root and password as root, so that if that is accidentally committed, and that database is only accessible on my local machine, and so that no one can do any harm with that username and password. You then want to ensure that your project has the following: a license, the README instructions on how to use it, and a code of conduct. Code of conduct in open source projects it's a fairly new thing, but it's growing quite common because we want to be as inclusive as possible in developing the community around our project. Then we have optional must-haves. So if you have time, you want to go and build a website to talk about your project. That website might have comprehensive documentation about how the project works, with describing all the APIs, and then if you can afford to, pick up a domain name, which it makes it easy to find the project. Promoting the project. So I typically post stuff to Reddit. So if it's a JavaScript project, I'll post it to the JavaScript and web dev subreddits. If it's a Ruby project, you can post it to Ruby subreddits. And then also tweet it to your followers. So people who are actively following you on Twitter are going to be more engaged in what you're actually working on. Aside from that, you can write about it on your blog, and then also write guest blogs on other blogs. So I run a project called Simple State Manager, and I've written about it for .NET Magazine. I've written about it for a tech blog called Modern Web, and on my own blog. So after getting your project off the ground, you want to know how to take care of it and improve it. So when versioning your project, you should be using semantic versioning. This allows the users of a project to understand what sorts of changes the release makes. So you've got major releases, which is the first digit. When you change the first digit, you're signifying it's a new major release. It can introduce breaking changes, so the users will expect something to break if they update to a major release. Then you have minor releases, so this is normally adding new features. but no breaking changes are allowed. And then you have bug fixes. They just fixing bugs. No new features are added. Then you want to start engaging the community. So you want to engage with the user of your open source project on things like GitHub issues, and then you want to discuss improvements that they would like to see. And of course, every developer is human, at the moment at least. Scandat's not taken over and writing its own code. So with open source developers being human, you expect to find bugs in the code. So my advice with that is try to fix them promptly to help users maintain faith in the quality of your project. If you're unable to do it yourself, see if you can find someone to help you. So sometimes towards the end of a project, you might feel like it's no longer worth maintaining. It might be a polyfill for an old browser feature which now is supported by all the browsers. So sometimes you might not want to maintain that project anymore, and that's okay. At the end of the day, you're giving your time for free to develop this project, so don't feel like you have to develop it indefinitely. My advice is that word kept also completing. It's completed again. Simply add a note to your README file saying you've deprecated the project. I mean, if someone else values the project, they might even want to take over maintenance. So be on board with that. That is a possibility. Rounding up. So by contributing to open source, you're joining a community of developers helping to push the web forward. Not only is it pushing open source forward, potentially it's having influence what the browsers are going to implement. Even simply raising a smallest issue can benefit websites around the world, because there could be a bug in a particular browser that no one has noticed, except the users. So go contribute, and of course buy my book.